Jared Curtis's decision is going to transcend college football quarterback recruiting, and there's a team in the ACC that's also changing the guard in that conference. That's next here on The Portal.
Locked On presents The Portal, the daily podcast covering college football recruiting and everything NIL. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Your team every day.
Welcome back into The Portal, where you get your daily recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news. I am your host, Brian Smith, longtime recruiting analyst, and thank you for making The Portal Podcast your first listen each and every day. Today's show is brought to you by our friends over at Monarch Money. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. Big decision coming for arguably the nation's best quarterback. He's going to change the quarterback dominoes. Syracuse is a program that has completely changed the game, especially in the state of Florida with recruiting in the ACC. Will other teams follow suit, or will some people fall down? All of this and more, and to help me figure it out, my guy, John Garcia Jr. from Rivals.com. John, we are on the quote-unquote cusp of when everything just explodes in every direction, and like we're texting you, did you see what happened? Like those things are starting. Maybe the biggest one could happen anytime between now and early to mid-April. Jared Curtis visits Oregon, then he visits Georgia, where he was originally committed, just for all things put into perspective. Jared from Christian High School in Nashville, Tennessee, five-star recruit, quarterback, as gunslinger written all over him. What do you expect? Or is this going to be a situation like I think it is, where he commits and then everybody else it's just like a ping pong ball everywhere, a bunch of QBs fall down the ladder?
Yeah, 100%, Brian. I think this is one where everyone has eyes on him, right? Like you said, number one, if not number two type quarterback in this class, and certainly the best available. And I think that's really where the focus lies. Like you said, committed to Georgia, backs off so he can really get out there and take trips. And a bunch of schools dip their toes in because he is that talented. But in the end, it was right back to Georgia and then Oregon, right? So the true contrasting program that does still draw a lot of similarities to the Bulldogs. So he spends 4 days on each campus, and now it's like decision mode. Mom, dad, mentors, coaches, let's sit down after these trips and really figure this thing out, because there is a sense that this is it, right? I mean, he when he decommitted from Georgia, he said all the right things. Hey, I want to take visits. I want to do right by this process, because college football is crazy, as we all know. The dominoes, the coaches, the players, the what's legal, all of that moves, right? All of that moves. So he really wanted to do some due diligence. And when he sort of reopened it, reset it, whatever you want to call it, it came back to these two programs. And everything we hear reflects on how close it is, right? Oregon is still recruiting other quarterbacks. Georgia is still recruiting other quarterbacks. So there's some confidence, but there's also a caution approach from both of these programs. And I think that also shows you how big a deal this decision is going to be. And again, by all indication, it's going to come in the next matter of days or weeks, which is very important for all involved. So it kind of tells you that Curtis is a kid who kind of gets it, right? He understands he's a priority, but he also understands it's got to be accelerated. You're QB1, you're a five-star guy, you are a needle mover. So there's so many other dominoes that come off of his singular decision that, it really benefits everyone involved for him to get it done, within the next month or so. So by all indication, that is the plan. And right now it's really close. I mean, you could easily build a campaign for Georgia, and you could equally build one for Oregon, right? I mean, he was committed to Georgia, backed off for a reason, right? He needed to take a closer look at other schools for a reason. And Oregon rose to the top of that crop against the Bulldogs. And then on the Georgia side, you're like, hey, he was committed there for a reason early on, wanted to open it up just as time went on. But here's Georgia still there in the thick of it in the very end. And that is not coincidental, right? So you could sort of build the case for momentum for either program. And look, when you spend 4 days at a top flight school, and in this case, both, it's going to be good, right? It's going to be a good visit. You're going to learn some new stuff. you're going to settle in and really start to picture yourself there almost inevitably, right? It's double the length of an official visit, which is supposed to be the most thorough that the recruiting process allows. So I think it's going to be a huge decision for both Kirby Smart and Dan Lanning, both for now and into the future, because it does affect the other school and all the other blue bloods still trying to chase or finalize their status with an elite QB in this class.
I think if I had to pick, and I don't have any insight, I'm not talking to Jared here, I think he will pick Georgia for the following reason. It's so close, like you said, it's just easier because it's closer. There are rumors that, I'm sure he's getting plenty of NIL opportunities at either school. Oregon, not any surprise to anyone, they have arguably the best NIL in the game. It's certainly in that conversation. Georgia under Kirby Smart is a little bit less likely to throw a massive amount at a kid for upfront money for a lot of reasons. And that's a whole nother week's worth of shows, that conversation. I don't really want to dive into that right now, but they want you to earn it. That's the short answer. But I don't think Jared, from meeting him and being around him, is a kid that's worried about making his money. He expects to be great. I think he will pick Georgia. That's my guess. Do you have any sense or any guess on this? And what would your pitch be if you were Oregon?
Yeah, if I'm Dan Lanning, I'm on the other side of it. Look, there's a reason why you weren't settled. There's a reason why this wasn't done. There was enough of an itch, enough of a curiosity to truly open the process up. And at Oregon, there is, you could really argue it's more pressure, but I'll go the other way. I'll say it's a little less pressure in terms of just the timeline, right? That room is deeper. Dante Moore's handed the keys now, a guy who's expected to be as good or better than a Jared Curtis. So there will be a scenario in theory where you could sit back and learn. And there's some other great QBs in that room as well. I think Austin Novosad's going to be a starter in the P4 in the next 2 years, whether it's at Oregon if he beats out Dante or somewhere else maybe thereafter. So there's a lot of potential to sit back and kind of say, okay, this is, number 1 or 2 program in the Big Ten at worst. This is how it's operating. This is how the Ducks play into it. And then you kind of Arch Manning that thing and you wait your turn and then boom, it's all yours. Here comes the hype machine all over again. At Georgia, I think it's a little more pressure packed on a quicker track. And now look, Curtis is a confident kid. I'm sure he's ready for that if it comes. But look, that's QB's one of those positions at Georgia where it just hasn't been consistent. I think we can go expand on that in a lot of ways. You could go system, you can go play caller, you can kind of, move the buoy there a little bit in either direction. But for whatever reason, it hasn't been as consistent in Athens as it has been in Eugene. So the piece that would be looked at to help get that program back to the mountaintop would be singular towards Jared Curtis, so I think there's just a whole different level of maintenance versus reemergence that he would have to look at. And even a confident quarterback who knows what he can do, I think you got to weigh all of those things. And then when you start to look at splitting the hairs, you mentioned it. NIL is going to be stronger on the front end at Oregon. I think we could all agree on that front. And then if you looked at just where each offense has been the last few years, Oregon's has been more successful through a conference change in this playoff era, in this mold, and it retains, a lot of the battery that had that going from Lanning to Will Stein, et cetera. So I think all of those factors would probably push me a little bit more towards Oregon, and also the simple fact that, look, getting a recommitment from a 5-star is so rare. I get it. If any program's going to do it, it's Georgia, it's Ohio State, it's those guys. But when you lose a commit, it's so hard, even if you want them, to get that kid to readjust and still kind of find his way back home to your base. So I think the odds are with the Ducks at this time. They certainly had the momentum going into these visits, but now we do hear that it is very touch and go. So I think a lot more evaluation is ahead, but I'll take the Ducks for argument's sake.
When we come back, regardless of where Curtis goes, and obviously, as John Garcia just said, this is up in the air. There's a guy out in California that's really good, and a few others that are in the mix, maybe with Georgia, maybe with Texas, maybe some other places. That is next here on the Portal Podcast. Scaling your business requires the right expertise at the right time. With Upwork, you can find specialized freelancers in marketing, development, design, and more, experts ready to help you take your business to the next level. Upwork gives you business flexibility by connecting them with top freelance talent across multiple industries, IT, AI, web development, and marketing included. Whether you need extra hands for a project or a long-term partner, Upwork makes hiring simple, and it also makes it affordable. Most importantly, it's fast and easy. Posting a job is free and simple, and within a day, multiple qualified candidates will be likely to choose from. Visit Upwork.com right now and post your job for free. That's Upwork.com to connect with top talent and grow your business today. This show is also brought to you by our friends over at Fabric. Life moves fast, especially when you have a family. One day, you're watching your kids take their first steps, and before you know it, they're off to college. That's why securing your future is so important. Fabric by Gerber Life makes it simple to get term life insurance that fits your family's needs. With Fabric, you can apply for term life insurance online right from your couch. You can be covered in under 10 minutes, and in many cases, no health exam is required. Peace of mind as a parent. I want to make sure that my family is financially protected no matter what happens. Fabric gives me that peace of mind. Join the thousands of parents who trust Fabric to help protect their families. Apply today in just minutes at meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. That's meetfabric.com/lockedoncollege. Policies issued by Western Southern Life Assurance Company. Not available in certain states. Prices subject to underwriting and health questions. Ryder Lyons is the guy that you and I are both fascinated with. We've seen him throw it around at Under Armour. We've seen him on these videos with his huddle. As you told me one day, we were talking, he's as fun to watch on huddle as any player in the 26 class. For those who don't know, he plays at Folsom High School in Northern California. He's in the Ducks realm as well. He could end up there if Jared doesn't. He's an LDS kid, so there's the mission part. He's probably going to take a one-year mission. And he's a guy that USC was involved with before they got their commitment that flipped from Oregon. There are so many spider webs here with the Jared Curtis recruitment. I think Ryder Lyons is the most fascinating recruit in the country, especially if you're just talking about quarterback. The LDS factor, BYU, they've got money. If they decided to go the NIL route with him and him to come there after a year, I have a hard time seeing where they wouldn't be a major factor. Michigan's involved. We both know they've got a lot of NIL. Tell people why you think Ryder Lyons is a great quarterback, and are you as fascinated with his recruitment as I am?
Yeah, this was really, his game was more fascinating than his recruitment until a couple months ago, right? This was viewed as USC's race to lose. Number one QB in California is going to stay there. It's kind of by default, but then here comes Jonas Williams, long time Oregon commit, to circle it all the way back. Long time Oregon commit, and USC, Lincoln Riley just latch on here in the last 6 months or so. And then the buzz becomes imminent there. Hey, this flip is happening. This kid wants to play for Lincoln Riley and right now. So Williams flips from Oregon to USC. So now the Oregon spot is open. Enter the Jared Curtis conversation right around the time he opened the process back up. So it became a bit of a frenzy. And yeah, in some respects, Lyons, despite a 5-star tag, despite fascinating film, is kind of the odd man out, which is kind of crazy, to talk about out loud. But there's a reason why, he was, we thought the early pick by Lincoln Riley, which is always sort of a, you don't look at how colleges put their boards together very often, but at QB, what Lincoln Riley's opinion says at the high school ranks, I think holds some weight, right? I mean, he's obviously developed as well at that position as any coach in the country. So you pop on the tape there of Ryder Lyons and you just see so much fun, whether you want to comp him to a Johnny Manziel, a Jackson Dart, a Matt Corral, just these quarterbacks who physically got it, but there's just another layer they can get to when it hits the fan, when that rusher's free, and they've got to go off script, it becomes poetry. It becomes art. Think Kyrie Irving in basketball. Luka Doncic, just guys who make things look easy when they're surely not. That's Ryder Lyons. He's got all the physical traits, but he really does operate at a higher level when it's a little crazy. And who's more, I mean, it's the perfect era for that type of quarterback. Now you would, as a coach say, okay, let's get it to where it's not as crazy, get the ball out faster. Let's work on the mechanics. Of course, right. All of that stuff is to be expected at the next level, but it led to crazy production at Folsom, which is one of these offensive factories at the high school level. But Lyons might be the best of the bunch. And if you just look at the Folsom QBs, a lot of Power 4 quarterbacks and some NFL quarterbacks have emerged from that program. And if this is the best of that bunch, I think it tells you a little bit why so many schools were in early on this kid, who was viewed as a USC lock. So now it becomes, okay, he takes a step back and BYU is there. BYU has always been there, right? And we talked about his LDS status and what that could mean for his recruitment. Look, we talked about Oregon, being a smoother path than Georgia. There's a little bit of time there. If the Ducks were to lose out on Curtis and circle back to Ryder Lyons, which appears to be the pecking order. It was Jonas, Curtis, Lyons for the Ducks. If that is how it sort of shakes out for them, they can maybe be one of the few programs that could afford to say, hey, Ryder, go serve this mission. Obviously, it's something you're passionate about, something that is instilled in you. Go do that. We'll be here on the back end. Now, we haven't seen a lot of those guys pan out at the NFL level. We actually were looking into that. How much should should a ranking be tweaked based on a mission? It's just not something we've dealt with a lot with a 5-star bona fide guy at the top of the list. But here's Lyons, and he's obviously, number 3 in the country for us. So we are buying into him as the exception to whatever rule that may become. And I think Oregon would be an interesting path in that regard. Obviously, BYU is the conventional path, right? This is something that BYU has specialized in forever, especially at the quarterback position. And they've built a system as to where, that experience playing with older players has, really created the culture of that program beyond, any religious elements. So BYU is going to be in the thick of it. And probably we're always going to be a premier option, second, third option for a Ryder Lyons. For me, where it gets interesting is the other schools, Michigan, Ole Miss. I mean, some of these other programs that maybe were never associated at the top of the list for him, they're hanging around. They're hanging around in this thing. So the longer Curtis holds off to be the chief domino in this whole thing, the first domino in this whole thing, these other programs, Michigan, Ole Miss, et cetera, can kind of continue to keep a guy like Ryder Lyons warm. Maybe Florida State is a sneaky program for him. So I think that will be fascinating relative to Curtis's timeline. Now, if we get off the show and Curtis pops for Georgia and Lyons pops for Oregon, it's all for naught. And we go on to the next dominoes, but it surely affects a lot of programs involved. Ohio State is sort of up in the air with their QB recruit for 26, and who could blame them, right? All the 5-stars they brought in before this point is like, you could understand why an elite QB might be, holding off there. But then that brings in the next layer of guys in the dominoes, right? How does this affect Bo Bentley, who, as we record this, is at Ohio State? He's maybe the most, fast rising uncommitted quarterback in the class. Oklahoma has been viewed as the favorite. Well, they have a commitment, right? Jaden O'Neal. So right. If Bentley goes to Oklahoma, does O'Neal now open it up? Where does he start to look? Florida State, Georgia, et cetera. Again, all relative to Curtis' decision. And then there's Landon Duckworth, who's maybe the best dual threat quarterback available beyond a Ryder line. You see, this thing just gets a little crazy this time of year, but all these guys are elite. They're all blue chippers, all top 100 guys on Rivals. So you understand why it's such an important decision at the very top, because it could go so many which ways thereafter. It's NFL draft season, so we're seeing a little bit of talk of that, but it's so funny how we see these analysts trying to break it down. Well, if Cam Ward goes here, what does that mean for Shedeur Sanders? And they make it seem like it's a huge deal when there's only 2 quarterbacks involved. Well, in this scenario, there's like 10 that eventually get involved with one kid's, verbal commitment, which isn't even binding, so it's sort of a microcosm of the beauty, the chaos, and how wild it gets in college football recruiting. Again, especially in this NIL era, a lot of these guys had already been committed. We mentioned Curtis had been committed to Georgia. Lyons was a shoe-in for USC. Landon Duckworth was a South Carolina commitment a year ago who looked like he was going to flip to Gus Malzahn and UCF at one point. So it changes so quickly as the landscape sort of evolves and people get to sort of zoom in on the very best at the game's most important position. So we could do a show every day on QB Dominoes, man. Sign me up.
Yeah, it's a lot of fun. Here's an interesting point with this. If Curtis picks Oregon, I think it makes it even wilder because Georgia really needs to hit a home run in this cycle. They're after Bentley. They're teeter-tottering around with, among others, Jaden O'Neal, who is the Oklahoma commitment that you mentioned, and Bo Bentley's talking to them. Let's not forget about Brady Smeagol. He's a guy that Michigan could possibly end up with, but Washington's involved. He's involved with South Carolina. I mean, it's just wild that it's so broad now across the country with recruiting, but especially at quarterback, because we both know if you miss at QB, you can have all the pass rushers and corners and tackles and all that. You're not going to go very far in the playoff. You're just not. You really got to find a way. And I think that's the one spot that UGA fans are grumbling about a little bit. Duckworth's another kid that UGA might get. Like Georgia's quarterback board is impacting the entire country. So if they do not get Curtis, I'm curious to see who they do get and when, because it could change for 5 or 6 schools. It's not out of the question that Duckworth still ends up in South Carolina or Malzahn, but this time in Tallahassee.
Of course.
It's so freaking wild. When we come back, we're going to talk about a wild change in recruiting because it's something that John and we've talked about this on the phone. We didn't see it coming, but last year it started a trend. There's a certain school in the ACC that's starting to make noise in Florida and elsewhere. That is next here on The Portal. Ever check your bank account and wonder, where did all my money go? Between dining out, online shopping, and entertainment, it's easy to lose track. That's where Monarch Money comes in, your personal CFO, gaining you the visibility and control over your finances. Monarch Money isn't just a budgeting app. It's a complete financial command center. You can track all your accounts, investments, and spending in one place, so you stop just managing your money and start building wealth. Surprising insights to this. Look, I've lost track of certain apps and different things with where I spend my money. It's pretty simple. If you don't have it under one roof, it can be very difficult. And when you use Monarch, it helps you keep your spending in control and, again, help you build your financial control. Take control of your finances with Monarch Money. Use code LOCKEDONCollege at monarchmoney.com for 50% off your first year. That's monarchmoney.com, code LOCKEDONCollege for half off your first year. John, the Syracuse Orange have completely shocked me. I told Jackson Holzer of Locked On Orange or Locked On Syracuse that I will buy you a steak if Calvin Russell signs with Syracuse. That was last year because I laughed at it. Now it looks like that is very possible now. It's hilarious because I'm like, dude, that's a basketball school. Prove me wrong. Right now they're getting it done. And here's a great backdrop to what we're getting ready to talk about. I was at Battle in the Trenches in South Florida last weekend, ironically. And the Southridge coach comes up to me and we're just talking about different people and recruiting and just different stuff. And he says, Fran Brown always causes problems for him because he must have a gap or something at 3:00. And that's when we lift. Cameron is over there on FaceTime with him. And he's like, Fran, get off the phone with my player. We're trying to lift. Fran is a recruiting nut. He's from Kirby Smart's tree, which helps.
Not a bad one.
Ties. He's recruited South Florida. So he's after it. Give people perspective. I'm still learning about this. I mean, you're a South Florida guy. How impactful has Syracuse, not just Fran now, but their staff been in South Florida and throughout the Sunshine State to begin? And then we'll go from there.
Well, yeah, it's been an emphasis and a clear one, since really the day Brown took the job. I think, he's got roots in the Northeast, obviously. I think Camden, New Jersey, and he kind of parlayed that to, hey, like I'm a Northeast guy, I'm a tri-state guy. So he parlayed Syracuse with, hey, I'm coming back home. I'm coming home to coach here. So he emphasized that right out of the gate, but the rest of the staff was in Florida. It just seemed like the first scholarship offer for future Power 4 recruits what was coming in from Syracuse. And I think that goes, as a credit to Fran and who he put around him. A lot of these players or a lot of these assistant coaches, staffers, etc., have different ties to different parts of the country, but it just really seemed like there was an emphasis not only in South Florida, but in the state of Florida as a whole. I mean, I couldn't tell you how many rivals profiles I make because Syracuse is the first school to offer a kid, and when you start off at the Power 4 level, you kind of force our hand, right? Okay, this is clearly an FBS prospect because offer number one is not, a D2 or a G5 or even, a low end P4 school. No, it's a school coming off of 10 wins that feels like it's sort of reemerged into the college football landscape. So the aggression, the ambition of that staff, I think is really showed. And you look at a huge recruiting class that they signed, I think 30 plus guys in the 2025 class, a bunch from the state of Florida, including their two highest ranked recruits, both in the secondary, Caleb Singleton and Demetrius Samuel. And then you look forward to 2026, the class we're looking at now, a bunch more Floridians already involved, including for blue chip recruits like a Javion Cooper, big offensive lineman out of Melbourne Central Catholic, who we saw a couple weeks ago. You understand why, long, raw, athletic, and he's got a bunch of other schools on him. Yet Syracuse was in so early that there's a sense of loyalty there. There's a sense of, hey, this school believed in me before Florida State, before Miami, before some of these other schools that are a little bit closer to home. So I think that resonates with a lot of recruits. Again, you fill yourself with relentless recruiters who are younger, who understand the modern game, which is really about consistency as much as anything. And that's why you get Syracuse involved with not only that maybe tier 2 guy in the state of Florida, but a tier 1 guy like a Calvin Russell, who is, arguably the best receiver in the state of Florida, because not only are they selling that consistency, but they've gotten him on campus. He's going to be back on campus again soon. And they're just open. They're open to basketball. They're open to, a Javari Flowers being a two-way player. Maybe they're open to more things that, again, reflect a modern, youthful approach in recruiting. And look, there's also some other things that are in their favor. Private school NIL is in good shape. I think those are clear advantages for Qs. And look, the main thing you sell a Floridian, hey, yeah, it's upstate New York, but we got a dome. There's a dome here. Don't worry about it. There's a dome here. You'll get to go play Miami down there and have your family there, Florida State, etc. And then when you have a home game, yeah, they'll come up and be cozy in a dome that I believe didn't have AC until recently, right? Even though it was called the Carrier Dome at one point. So it's just kind of this combination that makes sense. And then you pair all of that with a 10-win season. And, the draft's going to happen, and there's getting Kyle McCord's going to get drafted. You're going to see all these guys getting drafted, including some Floridians like an Aronde Gadsden II. And then it all just kind of reinforces that, hey, that's a school that I can still go accomplish my goals at and maybe see the field that much sooner relative to some of the other schools that are on my list. So it's just kind of the perfect storm right now. It's new, it's fresh, it's different, yet it's successful, and it kind of works, So I think all of those elements are pushing Syracuse, up the ranks. I think they've got 9 or 10 guys already committed in 2026, including, again, several from the state of Florida. So it's one of those, if it ain't broke, don't fix it scenarios, in my opinion.
Also, an interesting trend is North Carolina. You and I have touched on it a little bit, the Belechick effect. For those of you that are watching this on YouTube, I put that on the sidebar. Like, I think Bill impacts kids, and I get it, especially if you're a defensive player, John. Look, if I was a parent, my kid was a D lineman or like a linebacker, it'd be hard. And
I mean, he's got Lawrence Taylor there on the
bench.
What are you supposed to do with that?
Yeah, I know. Like, he played at Carolina, for those that don't know.
Yep.
They just got Trayshawn Ruffin to commit a couple of days ago. He's a top 200 defensive lineman, big body guy that they need. If they're going to two gap, he's just over 300 pounds. They're starting to get some of those guys. They got an offensive lineman that's massive, and Anthony Hall, a kid out of the greater Boston area that's 340. They're starting to trend in that direction, and they're interesting. And I also just want to say, like, Louisville's still doing good. The ACC is wild. you don't know who's going to go where. Like Florida State's trying to rebuild. Miami and Clemson are probably the baseline for recruiting. But that league after that is really wild. And like Georgia Tech just got their first commitment. So they're on the other end of this. I don't know what's going on with Georgia Tech. I don't know how you're at one commitment right now. That's a little concerning, but it's been really, really crazy. And the ACC in general is just a lot of fun to follow in terms of what we get to do with recruiting. John, tell everybody where they can find your work.
Yeah, real simple, rivals.com. Again, busy time of year. We're tracking Jared Curtis every day and plenty more.
Yeah, same here, man. It's the Jared Curtis sweepstakes. That's going to impact just about every school in one shape or form. It's really, really important. You can get all your latest recruiting, NIL, and transfer portal news here on the Portal Podcast. Like and subscribe. We will see you again soon here on the Portal.